And hello, everybody. Welcome to FSU Coach Live. My name is Tim Backhurst, and today's special guest is Marty Munson, a triathlete coach. Marty, I always love having people coming on from different sports, and triathlon is one that I don't recall ever having had the opportunity to chat to on this show. So welcome. If you wouldn't mind, just give us a little bit of your history.
Sure. Yeah. So I actually got into triathlon coaching because I suffer from late onset athleticism. So I was not an athlete in my youth. And I grew up in the era of the presidential fitness test, which basically was you try to do sit-ups, you try to do pull-ups, you never see them again. And at the end of the year, you do them again and are just as bad. So when I learned that you could actually get better at a sport by practicing it and using data and having a strategy and having a coach, it was a revelation to me. And so I am also a journalist in as well. And so as is my nature, I studied everything I could about this concept of getting better and having a good coach, and then became one. So that is how I found my way into coaching. And I do specialize in open water swimming. And, triathlon came first, and then open water swimming came second. But open water swimming is really where I spend a lot of time and energy these days.
How does one become a triathlete coach?
Oh, okay. Well, that's interesting. There are lots of different pathways and there are lots of different certifications. I actually chose USA Triathlon certification, but there are quite a few that are now, considered, that they give you a good education. And I think the thing, as you as an educator would probably know even better than I do, my dad always used to say that an education doesn't really mean you're educated, it means you're educable.
Mhm.
And really, the coaching certification is really, really, really important. But it's what you do with it after that that really matters and really makes a great coach. And I think, one of the things that has allowed me to extend my own coaching is I've been coached by some great people. And I also have the luxury of, in my job as a journalist, being able to call up coaches and find out what they're doing and seeing and thinking and feeling, which is, how I found my way to you.
Yeah. The concept of triathlon is interesting because it's a multi-discipline sport. You're swimming, then you're cycling, then you're running, and you specialize in one, but you have to be familiar with all three and how they link together. You've done triathlons, no doubt that helps. I've survived one once and learned my lesson. But how do you go about learning all three and understanding how they combine? Because perform poorly in one and it could affect the other two.
Very much. And you know what? The way to think about triathlon is it's one sport that has three different components. So it's not actually three sports mashed together, even though that's its actual history. And it was sort of a game for three athletes to say who's better and strung them all together one day, and history was made. And here we are all now pursuing three sports instead of one, but tying it up into this one sport we call triathlon. And I think one thing that you find out very quickly in triathlon is that there are translatable skills in between each discipline, but the common denominator of all three sports, and kind of maybe any sport, and what I spend a huge amount of time coaching people to do, is to get their head and their feet in the same room.
What do you mean by that?
So in the same water, on the same bike, in the in the run together. So really what creates performance challenges for a lot of athletes isn't just the swimming, the biking, and the running. It's how they manage their mind and all of that. And I can give the example through swimming that if you're not in the present and you're worried about how you're going to get to that next buoy, it's this, you really need to focus on where you are in the water and what you need to do in order to get to that buoy. I mean, it's the same concept as run the mile you're in.
Yes. I like that. Now I'm curious, how do you get athletes to actually do it? Because it's easy to say, be in the present, focus on what you're doing right now. It's another thing to actually get the athletes to do it. Do you have any specific ways that you do that, strategies that you help athletes to do something like that?
Totally, because I think that's the most important thing is that, and I'm going to go back to open water just because I think it's the place that people, triathletes especially, triathletes are not, many people come to triathlon with a cycling and a running background, and people, worry about the water a lot, and I think the key in managing, any of this and managing your mind, a lot of people will say when you get into open water, don't battle the ocean, don't battle the lake, and I'm like, well, that's kind of hard to do. You need some tools with which to manage your mind when you get in there, and the most important tool, especially in the water, is the exhale. So we teach people to have different tools in terms of the very first thing I teach people when they get in the water is to exhale, to bubble, say the word bubble underwater. So you really get that exhale, which does a lot of things for you. Because of course, a lot of people swim.
Yeah.
How am I ever going to get to the first buoy? Oh no, this is horrible. This is a terrible idea. I knew it. you know, and panic ensues. And so I think once you experience that exhale, it does a couple of things. I mean, of course, biologically, it activates the autonomic nervous system. So already you are out of the worry and sort of into that, tend to befriend system. But also you have a tool, and we practice this so much of you have this tool of breathing out, and we even have people count, sing the ABC song. It's things that really occupy your mind and bring you back into the present. Mantras, people talk about mantras a lot. I personally have not necessarily found a mantra that works for me, you know what I mean? It could be different things on different days, but the idea if you repeat something as if your life depends on it, it really brings you into the present and stops your mind from saying, "How am I going to get to the first buoy? Oh my gosh, how am I going to get to 13.1? I'm in point 5." And even if you bring in, it's so ridiculous, the ABC song, it short circuits that. And in the water, if you exhale, it's a huge help. It's a game changer.
Mhm.
Yeah.
In my own limited experience, one of the challenges I had in the open water, other than training in a pool and then having to transition to open water, was, I mean, early on, I got kicked in the face and my goggles went crazy. I got a bunch of water in my mouth, and all of a sudden that panic sets in. And then making sure that you're swimming in the right direction, because you don't have a lane to guide you. I'm obviously a beginner. Experienced triathletes don't have such issues. They may, but not to the degree I did. How do you get a swimmer to go beyond, or a triathlete to go beyond what I suspect many of them say? Swimming is my worst discipline. I hate the swimming part. I just have to get through it. Thank goodness it's first.
Right. We're going to help you figure out how to get through it. And so one of the things, in the swim, if we want to go there right now, but in the swim, I find there to be 4 places that people really, their minds get ahead of them. And the first one is when they're looking at the course and they think the F word, and that's far. Right? You cannot think far, and this is a little bit of a thinky thing. So, rational mind doesn't always win the game in this thing. Breathing will always bring you back to the present, your rational mind, but if you at least know that if I showed you the whole course on a half Ironman bike course, you would say, I'm not doing that. I'm going home.
Yeah.
If you could see it all at once, but the swim, you can see all at once and it looks really far. And so I say, don't think far. Think about what do you have in your arsenal that's going to get you, that always gets you through the water. You know, what are your technique cues? Is it, thinking about your fingers toward the, back of the pool, not that you have it in open water? What is your cue that helps you be in the present and that helps you move forward? And if you do that, you will move forward. You don't have to worry where the buoys are, because if you're moving forward, you will get them. So already you have these tools. Yeah.
And a triathlon athlete this is a long-term sport. It's not something that, you do a triathlon 3 times this year and then you're kind of, that's it, you're done. This is a progression over many, many years of training to progress towards goals that may exist, right? Maybe it's doing an Ironman, maybe it's competing in a specific event or qualifying for a specific event. Can you talk a little bit about the difference in triathlon in terms of goal setting compared to what we normally see in team sports, where our goal is to win the national championship and we've got to beat these teams in front of us? Triathlon's very different in that respect.
It is. Some people do want to win the national championships. That said.
Very few, though. Very few. Most people who participate in triathlons are more interested in improving on themselves, I would guess.
Absolutely, absolutely. And the one of the advantages is that there are huge metrics that you can track, and it being an individual sport,
Can you give examples of those metrics?
I'm sorry?
Examples of the metrics?
Oh, so you could track, you can track your power on the bike. You could, of course, track your speed in the pool. There are millions of ways to do that. There are even now goggles that, track your speed per lap. It reads out right in the goggles. Yeah. And then there are power meters on the bikes, and of course, you can check your Garmin for your run. I know athletes who do none of those things and are very good athletes. So there could be a tech arms race, and there doesn't have to be. But you had asked about how you set goals around this, and most often you work with your coach to decide what's important to you. And of course, the very first step, I mean, as you know, which is like coaching 101, but it's easy to forget this as an athlete. The first thing is you have to say, is my goal consistent with my life? Because so many of the people I coach, all of the people I coach are grown-ups who have lives as well as sports to manage. And so you have to say, if you're going to do Ironman this year, then what does that mean to your life? And are you willing to do that?
Yeah, I'm actually just writing that down. It's a good question to ask the people who do coach your clients. What do you want? Are those goals achievable within the parameters that you're willing to set?
Mm-hmm.
When we talk about coaching from your perspective, I'm curious how you operate as a coach. And the reason I ask this is there are many ways to coach now. We can coach virtually, we can coach in person, we may have a program that we coach, and all of them can be successful. What have you found? How do you operate as a coach, and what have you found successful for those who may be interested in kind of following your footsteps of, what, maybe I do want to be a coach. I have a job on the quote unquote pays the bills, but I want to do this as well. I'm passionate about this, but I just don't know how to make it work.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Right. Well, I think a key is to, get your education, and then also find opportunities to figure out what does work for you. If you work well in a group setting, or if you work well as an individual online. I actually love a group setting. I'm just like, I have my groups for everything. You know what I mean? And so I work with Empire Triathlon Club in Manhattan, and coach for them. And primarily that's what I do now, which is helpful because then I don't need to spend a lot of time marketing. I'm comfortable with where that is. Like, at another point, I may, take on additional clients. For me, I am not as excited about writing people detailed programs about how many hill repeats you have to do today. So I'm much more an on the ground, coach to help people execute the workout and then also to help people execute their race plans. So you may know that I write the mental performance column for Swimmer magazine.
Mhm.
So I'm super interested in helping people with their mental performance and less so about, well, I missed my last 2 run workouts. How do I adjust for that? You know what I mean? There are people who are great at that and love, love, love it. That said, I have also done some coaching on Zoom, some swim coaching, believe it or not, on Zoom, which is more, which is easier than you might think because you have the opportunity, which you don't have in the pool, to put their stroke, they take a video, and to put their stroke right next to the stroke of someone who is, a professional and show them your arms here, see if you can get it more here. And like in the pool, you just don't get that opportunity. I mean, you can bring a video, but in a lot of pools, video doesn't even, you can't even access your phone. Um, so there are advantages and disadvantages to everything, but for me, I love plugging into a group situation. And then I also do a lot of real-time open water coaching and used to do real-time team swim coaching, but pool time is really hard in Manhattan right now.
Mhm.
Yeah.
When we talk about triathlon, and bearing in mind I'm not somebody who's aware of what is going on in triathlon, I'm curious about how the high level triathletes work with coaches. Is it through a group system where they're part of a team, or do they tend to have individual coaches they work with, and kind of train separate to other people?
That's not the market that I work with most. So
Okay.
what I know from that market of people I've interviewed and things, people tend to be somewhat individual about it. You get an individual plan. You may work out with a team. There are some, people who work in a team setting. For athletes, it really works for some people, and then you always hear about so and so broke away from such and such a coaching, group or system. So I think if you're really motivated by people around you, and it can really do great things for your sense of competition. It can be really challenging for your sense of competition, and I think so. There's a distribution.
And looking at the way you have a role as coach, what would you say are the reasons that you coach in the first place? Because you don't have to. You do it. You're smiling a lot, so I know you enjoy it.
Right.
But but why do you coach? And then can you also give maybe some examples of the challenges associated with coaching, so that those who look to go into coaching and maybe triathlon, who knows, understand the perhaps some of the realities of coaching?
Sure. Yeah. So let's review the first question. First piece of the question is why I love it. Yeah. Okay. And what I hope to get out of it. I think I coach to help people get a sense of their own possibilities. Because for me, so much of my market is the entry level market. And I used to joke that, like, my job as a coach was to give people their first taste of the triathlon drug. And then it took over because you know how, like, you start getting into sports from a non-sport life, and all of a sudden you're going to bed at a different time, you're eating different things, you're hanging out with different people, and all of a sudden it can be such a life changer in such a good way because triathlon, you learn. And again, we were talking about it being 3 sports but 1 sport. One of the things that happens in triathlon that you learn to get good at is logistics.
Mm.
So you get used to managing your time and your stuff, like, the amount of stuff you end up with at a triathlon. You know what I mean? You just are hauling around stuff all the time. And, you learn to manage that, and I think that's a huge life skill is when you say, I'm going to be in Seattle this weekend and I'm not going to be with a bike, but I could rent one for my long ride. and I can't get to a pool. So how am I going to rate? You know what I mean? So already you're like, how am I going to manage this? And already learning some really useful life skills about being organized and thinking 2 weeks beforehand how you're going to work your schedule. So but one of the things I love so much about it is helping people recognize their potential. I started out coaching first-time triathletes, a lot of women who had never, ever, ever been across the finish line in their lives. And they got themselves across the finish line, with a program that we created together. And so many people's lives change when that happens, in a way of all of a sudden they realize, I have more than I thought I did.
We did get a question in the chat box. I'm just going to put it up here. Somebody I think you may know, but what are some of the suggestions for pool practice drills to help deal with open water panicking?
Yes. Okay. So the first thing is know that you don't have to panic. Second of all, I think it's really important in any kind of training to normalize it. So to say the goal of practicing the drills, which is a really good question, isn't to never have a panic attack. It's so that if you have one, you have the tools to manage it. And I would say, because you can't say it's never going to happen. And I think that that's a key with any of the sports we've talked about. One of my coaches very, very early on, I'm going to get back to the drills, I promise. One of my coaches very, very early on said, when you have a flat in a race, decide what you're going to do. So when you have a flat in the race, say, when I have a flat, I'm going to pull over. I'm going to take the opportunity to sit down for the minute it takes me to change this flat. And so I get rest. And I'm going to calmly change a flat because I know how to do that. And then I'm going to get back on the road. And I'm not going to really push it for those 30 seconds. I'm going to take a minute, warm up back to the race, find the people I was, competing against, and go on. And so, again, you say, when I have this feeling on my way to the first buoy, I am going to, and here's what we're going to do. A key, the thing that changes, one of the things that changes lives is from Paul Newsome at Swim Smooth. He recommends a drill called bubble, bubble, breathe, where you actually say the words bubble as you swim. And so you really say bubble, bubble, and then you breathe. I mean, you don't say the word breathe, but bubble, bubble, and it really gets that exhale rolling. So that's a really, really, really good drill. Another thing I like to do is practice in the pool. What happens when you go out too fast? Because so many people, you feel like you're not going anywhere. The, ocean's not helping you figure out where you are in space. You know what I mean? So, so many people go out too fast. So prepare for that. In the pool, go out way, 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 way unsustainably fast. Then keep going. What are you going to do? Figure out what you're going to do. Are you going to float on your back for a while and then regain your breath and then get back into your stroke? You have tools. You have tools so that when you have that anxiety moment, you're not, it normalizes it. You're like, oh, look, I have that. I trained for this. I'm good. Yeah.
A last question for me. Thinking about coaching in general, what advice would you have for others who are interested in becoming coaches or currently coaching?
Yep. I would say two things. One, get a good education behind you, get the certification. And two, and this is so, so, so important, train with coaches who are really well respected and watch them and ask and look over their shoulder, learn from them. Coaches are the best coaches. If you have the right coach around you, you can just learn so much. And also, you can learn how you never want to coach too from some coaches. But that's, fortunately in my experience, coaches tend to be really, really generous people in the world of triathlon. And you can learn so much from their style and their manner and their tricks and their advice. And, that's a good way to go. And also, know what you're good at, I would say, and really, really know what you're good at. I interview a lot of people and I spend a lot of time online looking for coaches who maybe haven't been quoted as much as the people who are out there all the time, but who I know have really, really interesting things to say. And sometimes that's a little harder to get to than I think it should be. So if you are a coach already and you have a thing that you like to reinforce, then put it out there in social media and on your blogs so that, people know that when they get you, this is what they're going to get.
That's a great answer. And a couple of things in there I think are valuable for coaches, particularly being known for something and being able to tell people that you do it so that they know to contact you. A lot of coaches may have social media, but may not use it effectively. And I think there's a lesson there. If somebody wants to reach out to you after the fact, listening to this on our podcast or later on YouTube, what's the best way for them to reach you if they have a question?
Oh, they're welcome to email me with any questions about it. Yeah, I'm happy to share.
And email is Coach Marty, Marty @gmail.com. Well, we have one more question. Almost going to shut down, but we've got one more question for you from Julia. How do you plan transition training when you only have access to pool to bike when you don't have an area to bike outdoors?
Oh, that's a really good one. Yeah. You know what? Try at least pool to run, because what you want the experience of is going from flat when you've been swimming to vertical, and that'll help you determine how you want to manage that transition. Like if you want to just run or if you want to walk, run. Keep in mind, a lot of water's low and a lot of transitions high. So you may feel when you get out of the water that you are really struggling. And that's your body's way of saying, wait a second, I was just horizontal and now you're asking me to be vertical and now you're asking me to run. So the more you can be familiar with that sensation, the more useful it is to you on race day.
It's kind of how you were talking about preparing for when this happens rather than what do I do if. It is happening. I've trained for this. We should be good.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, Marty, thank you so much for joining me today, and I hope that people do reach out to you with questions. Of course, just a reminder, everybody watching, we do these every couple of weeks, and if you subscribe, if you like, we'll make sure that you get notification when we do go live. But on behalf of myself, Tim Baghurst, and Marty Munson, thank you so much for watching.
Thank you.